Ease, oil stains, and butterflies. The wrench slipped from Maya's grease-stained hands and clattered against the concrete floor of the garage, the metallic sound echoing through the empty space like a gunshot. She stood frozen beneath the lifted Honda Civic, her heart hammering not from the near miss with the falling tool, but from the woman who had just walked through the bay door, the same woman whose silver Mercedes she had refused to service 3 times this month. The same woman whose perfectly manicured hands had never touched engine oil. The same woman who made Maya's carefully constructed walls tremble with just a smile. Maya had spent 28 years building a life that made sense. She woke at 5 each morning, opened Carter's auto repair by 6, and worked until her muscles ached and her mind went quiet. The garage had belonged to her father, and when he died 2 years ago, she had inherited more than just the business. She had inherited his dreams, his reputation, his customers who still called her Jimmy's girl, even though she could rebuild a transmission faster than any mechanic in 3 counties. She had inherited the weight of being the only person standing between her mother's medical bills and financial ruin. She had inherited a life that left no room for distraction, no space for want, no time for the kind of feelings that were currently making her hands shake as she picked up the wrench. Charlotte Westbrook represented everything Maya had learned to resent about the wealthy neighborhood that bordered her working-class street. She was a corporate lawyer who drove a car worth more than Maya's annual income, who wore heels that cost what Maya charged for a brake job, who probably spent more on a single dinner than Maya's grocery budget for a month. But worse than all of that, worse than the class divide that Maya had been taught to respect like an electric fence, was the way Charlotte looked at her. Not with pity or condescension, but with something that felt dangerously like recognition. The first time Charlotte had brought her Mercedes in, it was for a simple oil change. Maya had been under a Chevy Silverado, and her youngest mechanic Tommy had handled the intake. But Charlotte had waited, sitting on the cracked plastic chair in the waiting area that smelled like old coffee and tire rubber, reading a book instead of scrolling through her phone like everyone else. When Maya finally emerged, wiping her hands on a rag that would never come clean, Charlotte had looked up and their eyes had met.
3 seconds.
That was all it took for Maya to know she was in trouble. Charlotte had returned a week later, with a mysterious, rattling sound that Maya suspected was completely fabricated. Then she came back claiming her brakes felt soft, though the inspection showed they were fine. The third time, Maya had refused to even look at the car. She had stood in the bay door, arms crossed, and told Charlotte directly that she was running a business, not a social club, and that she did not appreciate having her time wasted. Charlotte had stood there in the autumn sunlight, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than Maya's rent, and for a moment her polished composure had cracked. Maya had seen hurt flash across her face, real and raw, before Charlotte had simply nodded and driven away. That had been 2 weeks ago. Maya had told herself she was relieved. She had told herself that whatever had been building between them, that electric, impossible thing, was better off shut down before it could burn her. She had told herself that she did not lie awake at night remembering the way Charlotte's voice softened when she said Maya's name, or how her perfume had lingered in the garage for hours after she left. She had told herself all of these lies until she almost believed them. Now Charlotte was here again, but something was different. She was not wearing a suit. She was wearing jeans, actual jeans, and a simple sweater, and her hair was pulled back in a way that made her look younger, more uncertain. She was not walking with her usual confidence. She was hesitating at the threshold of the garage like someone approaching the edge of a cliff. Maya forced herself to move, to step out from under the Civic and face whatever was about to happen. She kept the wrench in her hand like a talisman, something solid and real to hold on to. Charlotte stopped a few feet away, maintaining that careful distance they had both been so good at preserving. The words that came out of Charlotte's mouth were not what Maya expected. She had prepared herself for another fake car problem, another excuse, another round of the dance they had been doing. Instead, Charlotte said, "I'm sorry for lying to you," and her voice was shaking. She said, "My car never needed any of those repairs," and Maya could see the effort it took for her to maintain eye contact. She said, "I just wanted a reason to see you, and I didn't know how else to do it." And the confession hung in the air between them like something fragile and dangerous. Maya should have been angry, She should have told Charlotte to leave and never come back. Instead, she heard herself ask, why? And the single word carried all the weight of everything she could not say. Why would someone like you want anything to do with someone like me? Why would you risk your reputation by walking into this garage? Why would you look at me like I matter when the whole world has spent my entire life telling me I do not? Charlotte took a breath that Maya could see shake through her whole body. She said, because 3 months ago, I was sitting in my corner office on the 42nd floor, looking out at a view that cost my firm $6 million, and I realized I felt absolutely nothing, and her voice was gaining strength now, like she had been holding these words in for too long. She said, I have spent my entire life doing what I was supposed to do, being who I was supposed to be, and I am so tired of feeling empty. And Maya recognized that exhaustion because she carried her own version of it. Charlotte said, then I met you, and for the first time in years, I felt something real, and the vulnerability in her eyes was almost more than Maya could bear to witness. Maya wanted to believe her. She wanted it so badly that it terrified her, but she had spent too many years learning that wanting was dangerous. That hope was a luxury she could not afford. She said, you don't know anything about my life, and her voice came out harder than she intended. She said, you don't know what it's like to work 70 hours a week, just to keep your head above water, to make choices between fixing your own car and paying your mother's pharmacy bill, to be so tired that you can't remember the last time you did something just because you wanted to. And she was breathing hard now, years of suppressed frustration spilling out. Charlotte did not flinch. She did not offer empty reassurances or try to minimize what Maya was saying. Instead, she said, you're right. I don't know what that's like, and her honesty was startling. She said, I grew up with every advantage, and I won't pretend otherwise. And Maya felt something shift in her chest. Charlotte said, but I know what it's like to feel trapped in a life that looks perfect from the outside while you're suffocating on the inside. And there was such pain in her voice that Maya finally understood. They were both prisoners of different kinds of expectations, different kinds of cages. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of all the things they were both too scared to say, weighted with possibility and fear in equal measure. Maya looked at Charlotte, really, looked at her and saw past the expensive clothes and the polished exterior to the woman underneath, who was standing in a garage in the middle of a workday risking rejection, offering something precious and breakable. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was probably her mother's assisted living facility, or a customer with an emergency, or one of the 100 other demands that filled every moment of her life. She ignored it. For the first time in 2 years, she let something else be more important. She said, I get off work at 7, and watched Charlotte's whole face transform with hope. She said, there's a diner 3 blocks from here that serves breakfast all day. And she was taking a leap she had never allowed herself before. She said, if you want to know about my life, if you really want to understand what you're getting into, meet me there. And she was giving Charlotte a choice, giving them both a choice. Charlotte's smile was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. She said, I'll be there at 7. And the promise felt like more than just a dinner date. It felt like the beginning of something that might change everything. The weeks that followed were harder than Maya had imagined and more wonderful than she had dared to hope. Charlotte showed up at the diner that first night and stayed until they were the last customers, until the waitress had refilled their coffee cups 5 times, until Maya had talked more about herself than she had in years. Charlotte listened the way she did everything, with complete attention, as if Maya's words were the most important thing in the world. She asked questions that showed she was really hearing what Maya said, really trying to understand. They were impossibly different. Charlotte's world was conference, rooms and client, dinners and black tie fundraisers. Maya's world was early mornings, and grease under her, fingernails and the constant calculation of whether she could afford to hire another mechanic, or if she needed to keep working herself to exhaustion. Charlotte had a housekeeper and a wine collection, and season tickets to the symphony. Maya had a 1-bedroom apartment she barely had time to clean and a kitchen where she mostly reheated takeout because cooking for one felt depressing. But somehow in the spaces between their differences they found connection. Charlotte started stopping by the garage during Maya's lunch breaks, bringing sandwiches from the expensive deli near her office and not minding when she got grease stains on her skirts from sitting on the hood of whatever car Maya was working on. Maya started meeting Charlotte after work, still wearing her coveralls, and Charlotte would take her to places Maya had never been, art galleries and wine bars, and once, memorably, to a rooftop restaurant where the prices on the menu made Maya's stomach hurt until Charlotte gently took the menu from her hands and said, "Let me do this, please. Let me give you something." And Maya had understood that giving was Charlotte's way of showing love. Maya's mother noticed the change first. During their weekly Sunday dinners at the assisted living facility, she commented that Maya seemed lighter somehow, that there was something different in her eyes. Maya had not told her about Charlotte yet, had not told anyone because she was still not sure how to explain it, how to put words to something that felt so fragile and new. But her mother knew her too well, and one Sunday she took Maya's hand and said, "Whoever they are, they're making you happy, and that's all I need to know." And Maya had cried, right there in the cafeteria, because acceptance was not something she had expected. If this story is touching your heart, if you believe in love that crosses boundaries and breaks expectations, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories of real love and human connection to the world. The real test came 4 months in, when Charlotte's law firm hosted their annual gala. Charlotte had been anxious about it for weeks, and Maya finally understood why when Charlotte sat her down and explained. She said, "I want you to come with me," and Maya's first instinct was to refuse. She said, "I've never been to anything like that." And Charlotte took both her hands. She said, "I know I'm asking a lot," and her eyes were pleading. She said, "But I'm tired of hiding who I am, tired of showing up to these things alone when the person I love is you." And it was the first time either of them had used that word, of. Maya let it wash over her, let herself feel the truth of it. She said yes. The night of the gala, Maya stood in Charlotte's bedroom wearing a borrowed dress that Charlotte had insisted on buying her, trying not to panic. Charlotte came up behind her, and Maya could see both of their reflections in the mirror. Charlotte elegant and confident in emerald green, Maya awkward and uncertain in midnight blue. Charlotte wrapped her arms around Maya's waist and said, "You're beautiful," and Maya wanted to believe her. The gala was overwhelming. Maya stood in a ballroom that could have fit her entire garage 3 times over, surrounded by people in designer clothes, discussing cases and mergers and vacation homes. She felt like an imposter, like someone had made a terrible mistake letting her in. But then Charlotte's hand found hers, lacing their fingers together in full view of everyone, and Maya felt something powerful move through her. Charlotte was choosing her, publicly and without hesitation, and that choice meant everything. They danced. Maya, who had never danced in her life except for awkward high school slow dances, let Charlotte lead her across the floor. She stumbled and stepped on Charlotte's feet and probably looked ridiculous, but Charlotte was smiling at her like she was the only person in the room, and Maya stopped caring what anyone else thought. Later, when Charlotte's senior partner approached them with his wife, Maya braced herself for judgment. Instead, the man said, "Charlotte, you look happier than I've seen you in years again," and his wife added, "Love looks good on you both." And Maya realized that not everyone would understand, but some people would, and that had to be enough. Before we reach the end of this journey, I want to ask you something. If this story moved you, if you see yourself in Maya or Charlotte, if you believe that love deserves to be celebrated in all its forms, please leave a comment below. Tell us about a time when love surprised you, when it appeared where you least expected it. Your stories matter, and sharing them creates a community of hope and acceptance. 6 months after that first dinner at the diner, Maya was closing up the garage when Charlotte's Mercedes pulled into the bay. Maya smiled, wiping her hands on her coveralls, ready to tease Charlotte about finally bringing her car in for a real repair. But when Charlotte got out, she looked serious, almost nervous, and Maya's smile faded. Charlotte said, "I've been offered a partnership at the firm," and Maya's heart sank, because she knew what came next. She said, "It's everything I've worked for my entire career, And Maya nodded, already preparing herself for goodbye. But then Charlotte said, "I turned it down." And Maya's world tilted. She said, "What?" And Charlotte was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face. She said, "I turned it down because accepting would mean 80-hour weeks and constant travel and no time for a life." And she was moving closer. She said, "I've spent 20 years climbing a ladder. I'm not sure I even want to be on." And she took Maya's grease-stained hands in her perfectly clean ones. She said, "You've taught me that success isn't about corner offices or partnership tracks," and her voice was strong and certain. She said, "It's about being with the person who makes you feel alive, about building a life that matters." And she was looking at Maya like she was the answer to every question Charlotte had ever asked. Maya said, "What will you do?" And Charlotte smiled. She said, "I'm opening my own practice, small and manageable, doing the kind of law I actually care about." And Maya could see the future in her eyes. She said, "I want time for Sunday dinners with your mother, for bringing you lunch at the garage, for all the ordinary moments that make life extraordinary." And Maya was crying now too. They stood there in the garage as the sun set through the bay doors, two women from different worlds who had found something rare and precious in each other. Maya pulled Charlotte close, not caring about getting grease on her expensive coat, and Charlotte held her like she was something worth holding on to. They had both spent so long being what other people expected that they had forgotten how to simply be themselves. But together, in the oil-stained sanctuary of a garage where broken things got fixed, they had found something neither of them had been looking for. They had found home,